Welcome to JHart Modelworks. Join me for the third update on the Fujimi Dino 246 GTS. Welcome to my workbench. Let's get started.
Alright guys, it is Monday morning. Here's where we're at so far. We do have the engine mounted in place. Now there are 4 holes where the motor mounts go in, and those holes go all the way through the chassis. So I went ahead and covered those with some 0.04 inch Protect bolts. Now these are pretty cool. You have a flat side, and then you have the underside that represents the nuts and bolts and whatnot. And this is the side that I used so that I could get that bolted on detail so it looks like it was bolted in place. We have our rear sway bar, which I decided to do in yellow instead of black. This whole suspension is supposed to be black. Like almost everything in here is supposed to be black, and I just can't do it. I did some super stainless steel for the suspension arms. Figured that would set those out a little bit as opposed to the rest of the frame. Now when I did this, I thought it would be easier to leave the air cleaner off and build the frame around it and put everything on top. For some reason I was thinking that this went on top. It does not, and it was an absolute pain. I had to actually wiggle it up between the engine and the frame and then wiggle it into place and glue it down. And then this didn't really want to fit correctly. Apparently when I built it pointed too angled. It needed to be a bit more flat. It didn't look that way, but it did. So get this in place before you build this frame around here. Because this is standing up a bit, I just took a hairdryer on high and warmed this up, and then just gently pushed it down so that it would fit like it's supposed to fit properly. This frame is multiple pieces. There's a 2 side pieces, there's a cross piece in here. Then we have this, I guess it's a coolant tank. There's a little overflow hose that comes out through there. I added the overflow hose. Let's see. We have, I'm not entirely sure what this is, but it's glued in place. And again, I messed up. I didn't glue that on before I set this, because this back wall is separate as well. So you have to sit here and fiddle to build this frame up. You have to fiddle with getting these into their pins down there. There's pins at the bottom of this that you've got to get into the 2 holes down there. There's a hole here and a pin on this end that you have to get lined up. You have to do that on this side as well. And then there's a cross arm that you have to get lined up. And then you have to get them lined up into these holes properly. It's a pain. And before you do all that, you also need to get these fuel tanks in place, because there is a union that runs across between these 2. So you have to get that in place as well. But I ran off and forgot to put that in place because I was focusing on this frame. So I had to go wiggle that into place. That was fun. Tweezers are a good thing. So yeah, that's where we're at. And things kind of came to a screeching halt. As in the process of painting the brakes, I ran out of Mr. Surfacer. So I'm waiting on some Surfacer to come in. Should be in today. And we'll continue once it gets in. Alright guys. So this rear suspension is really kind of sketchy. That's going to be what it's going to look like assembled. But it's a pain in the ass to get it to this point. So I figured I would show you this other side on camera. So the first thing we need to do is we need to build this upright. The Fujimi does not specifically say to glue this or not to glue this. They just have a line with this going on top. So I'm assuming because this line goes from this piece to this piece that they're saying not to glue this. So that's what I'm going with. You want to make sure that you put in the hub on the flat side, as that is the mount for your shock absorber that goes to the inside. I'm going to put some glue just a tiny bit of glue right on the points where this is going to glue in. I'll very carefully set this down so as not to get any glue on that center hub. Presto, these pieces go together. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the end of the axle. And I want to put some down into the bottom of the lower control arm. Now, the way this should line up is the recess for your shock should go on the top and your brakes should point backwards. So I'm going to start by getting the axle into the center of the upright, and then push the upright down into, oh no, I lost it. There we go. Now we're going to add a little bit, just a drop to the top of the upright. Tiny drop right there. Tiny drop right there. Do get a little heavy-handed with my drop, so I'm going to come back in here and carefully move that. The upper control arm fits with the angle pointing towards the back of the car and the flat side up. There's a hollow side and a flat side. Step one is going to be getting these two locating pins in the two holes. Then we need to make sure that the upright sits, which may require a little bit of wiggling. There we go, finally. The upright needs to basically click down in place. Then this is the part that was a pain for me. The shock absorber goes into there and there. We want the spring end to go to the top and the end with the shock on it to go to the bottom. I initially tried to seat this into the upright first. And if you do that, the shock sits too high and it doesn't clear the arm. So what you kind of want to do is push it down a little bit further so that you clear this, then push it in, and then lift the underside up. So I'll show that sounds a little complicated. It's not. I'll get some glue on these points. So I'm going to go straight down with it, past where I think it should go, to the point that I can get it to seat up there. Then I want to come at this from the bottom and push it up and in. There we have it. Spring is in place. So that's how you have to do that to get that to sit right. So if you're building this kit and you start up at the top and you're trying to glue the shock into the upright first, you're going to have problems getting it underneath the arm of the suspension piece or the chassis. So push it through, get the chassis side put in first, then push this up and into place, because you can go up into that slot instead of trying to go from the top. It sits too high. All right, guys, we are back. It is Wednesday evening, so I need to stop building and start editing if I'm going to get this out this weekend. This is where we've stopped. We finished up the chassis. We have our suspension is in place for the rear suspension. Air cleaner is in. We have most of the exhaust in place, and it fit better than I thought it was going to. With me having to build the exhaust coming out of the engine, I thought this was probably going to be out of alignment, but it's really not. I did the chassis in the semi-gloss black, but I did the uprights in in super stainless steel from Mr. Color. Now there are some exhaust pipes that come out towards the back of the car to hold the tips. I'm leaving those off until final assembly, because when you go to mount this into the body, it's kind of weird. You've got to basically get one side in and then wiggle it to get the other side in, and that's after you get the front in here. So you basically have to get the front in and start wiggling and twisting. And I've seen several builders break the exhaust tips off, so I'm leaving them off for now, and I'll put those on towards the end. Did something I don't normally do, and that is I have weathered the underside a bit. So I just did some sponge chipping here and there along the leading edges where rocks would hit and things like that. A little here and there on the underside. There is a bit of Tamiya buff misted in places in here. I also took the same sponge, dipped it in some of that silver, and streaked it like straight down. But maybe a little bit of bottoming out or scraping on things. And then I just went over and toned it all down by just very lightly misting some semi-gloss black back over it. So, I don't know, it's interesting. I said I don't normally do this very often. It's an interesting effect though. Pretty happy with how this came out. Everything lined up pretty well. This chassis is a little bit of a pain to build, but it's not as bad as some other cars. Coming directly to mind is Hasegawa's 328 GTS. It has a very similar kind of rear chassis that you kind of have to build up around the engine, and they tell you to build it with the engine in place. And honestly, on that car, I would leave the engine out. I would put the transmission portion in on the bottom, build your suspension up, and then seat the engine down in that, between that suspension. There's just no room. It's inside the body, it's inside fender wells, and there's just no room to really work around. Moving on to the front, we do have our front suspension in as well, with our linkage. I did the sway bars in yellow instead of black. And again, I did the suspension arms and the uprights are in the stainless steel. This assembles all up as one little assembly, and then it just slides right up into the chassis, and it fits perfectly. There's just a couple little mount points right back here on this back edge, but it all just slides up and fits. I mean, it's really nice how that fits. So that's where we are here. And not much has been done on the body, with the exception of there is a small piece that goes inside here that has what looks like a trunk latch. It's not, at least it's not any kind of functional trunk latch, but it looks like a trunk latch, and the back ends to the headlights. This piece is a pain in the... There are 2 holes, and these 2 holes are supposed to line up with 2 mount points that are on the inside of the car, and the mount points are there. But they are so shallow that they don't do anything. They don't even really fit up and reach. So they're basically useless for locating. They should have been longer. So yeah, I don't know if I'm even on them. I don't even know if this is in right. We shall see. There is a trunk area here. So there's a piece that's going to come in right back behind here. It needs to sit up here, and I think it needs to sit up above this. I think this is a mount point for the chassis. Don't know. We shall see when it gets to be that time. I also added in some mesh. The real cars, I do not believe... all the reference photos show that these are just openings, and I thought they looked better with some mesh in there. If it were my car, I would be replacing it with some mesh. So I put some mesh in here. And yeah, that's about where we're at. Kind of puts us about halfway through the build. We just got through basically most of step 10. Coming up, we've got the interior, which I'm looking at the interior. I still don't have the parcel shelf installed in the body. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do the seat belts. I thought about just doing lap belts. I think there is a shoulder belt, but it may or may not be separate from the lap belts. Like, it may have been a separate belt. I'm not entirely certain. Or I may just do racing harnesses. I don't know. I think I've done racing harnesses one time before. They're a lot more involved. But so yeah, we're looking at the interior needs to get done. And they're calling this... they're saying fitting the cockpit, but this is the frunk area, or the bonnet room assembly. We've got all sorts of things that go up in the front, along with the spare wheel and all that. The battery's going to go in here. So basically the front end of the chassis and the interior, not sure which one I'm going to do first. I may hit both of them next week, I may not, but that's kind of where we're at. Thanks for joining me for this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.
If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Also, feel free to leave comments, feedback, critique, or anything else in the comment section below. I enjoy interacting with all my viewers in the comment section and try to reply to all the comments I receive. If you want to catch future videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and make sure you click the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. As always, thank you for watching, keep modeling, and have a great day.